It's May Day, and it's a time of year in the UK and many parts of the world perhaps that people are thinking of bringing their pots out into their gardens. Now, I must specify hundreds or even thousands of pots here on various gardens and projects around the place, and so I thought I'd just run through the different characteristics and styles and sizes of pots to give you an idea of how to choose them for your garden. And then we're going to Unity's garden, who's behind the camera, where she's doing an area. Oh, what's that? And she wants to discuss with me exactly what sort of pot she should get. Now, I've started off the video here and I brought Xanthi here. Good girl, Xanthi. You don't like sitting there, do you? In front of this pot. Now, I've just splashed out on this pot. I mentioned it before. And it's from Thomason Cudworth. And he makes them out of reproduction code stone. So he makes these himself. It's a sort of cement stone dust composite. And it's like a white terracotta and it's frost durable. And they are definitely high end. This is probably the most expensive pot I've ever bought. And it's about 400, for here, that is, for me. As my cocktail, it's about £450, I think it was, something like that. So they're not cheap, but he supplied many to places like the Bamford's estate in her amazing garden. In it, I've got this pelargonium that I've just popped in, which is atomic snowflake. And I think it's fantastic. And then I've just got a couple of other ones here. Xanthi, don't run off the table. I'm going to get Xanthi back and then I'll see you in Unity's garden. Unity, it's lovely to see your pink garden. So you've recently been starting working on this and I love your pink. I think it's fantastic. But you're looking at new pots for here.
So I'm not looking at new pots for this bit per se, because this bit is a bit busy, I think, because yes, it's a pink garden, but it's a main thoroughfare. It's from my French windows to the lawn. It's my main access outside.
Yeah.
So I don't want any more pots in this bit. It's that tiny patch, which is like a pathway there, which is often in shade. That's where I want to put the pots.
Lots of pots. Okay, so the pots that you have got here,
yeah,
I love these. So you designed these.
I've got these matching at the front of the house.
Yes.
And they've got quince trees in it and they're lovely. And I really like the shape and the design, but so I kind of designed these because they're a lot taller than we usually do, because I wanted the height so you can get underneath them. And to add drama, kind of, within the space.
I always think in a tiny space, and this is a tiny space. This is probably 4 metres by 6 metres. It's about the size of my greenhouse, isn't it?
Yes.
And I always think when you have something tall in a small space, it makes it look much bigger, much more 3D.
Yeah.
And I love these olive trees you've got in here. So these are baseless pots.
These are baseless.
We use a lot of metal pots. Now you've done the cylindrical style for this.
Yeah.
You've made them taller and thinner because you've got a small space.
Yeah.
And you put rivets around the top and you put the roll top so you don't cut yourself on the top.
I think the roll top looks softer. It's like the classic style, but it looks softer.
Yeah. And how much did he make these up for you for?
They were about 350 quid each.
Yeah, so they are, I think, a cylindrical metal pot that's acid etched, which these are. So they're galvanised mild steel, and then they acid etch them, i.e. they paint them with the solution, a mordant solution. Then they wash it off, and then they go that sort of leady colour, which is nice.
So I've had this one at them about a year. I got this bit done last summer, so they're about a year old. So they are slightly changing colour still, slightly
getting paler.
But I like that.
I love that, yeah. But so we do a lot of metal pots and all sorts of shapes and sizes, and I love the tapering metal pots.
But they're
much more expensive, yes. But we've used those on quite a few gardens.
But in terracotta, tapering looks great.
Yes.
We use tapering terracotta way more than we use straight up and down cylinder terracotta.
Yes, yes.
But for some reason in metal I just prefer the straighter.
Sometimes I also like the tapering ones.
Yeah.
But and also you can do, once you've galvanised it, you can do any finish on it. You can do a paint finish in any colour. Yeah. You can do a sort of black and bronze, a metallic colour.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
And we use liquid metal paints, which we spray on, having galvanised those, and they do black and bronze.
Black and bronze, it's really nice. We've done that quite a few times.
Yes, that's lovely, and a lead colour and a verdigris, all sorts of.
And then we do the arsenic green colour for time.
That's painted.
And then we do the lighter green, but it's about this colour green, the lighter one. That looks good.
Yeah, I think they're wonderful. But then for those though, we tend for time. We've done the traditional sort of what I call the their side planter. And they're the traditional square ones. And traditionally in France, they open them out and you bring your orange trees out in the winter and put them in your conservatory.
Oh, and you see them
orangery.
in all over the parks of Paris. They're sort of
Yeah.
that big, and you think,
Wonderful.
how much does that
aren't
cost?
they?
Though?
And I did approach the people who are a big supplier of those,
Is it,
Roy de Soleil,
yeah.
and they do them in every colour and size under the sun.
Any
They're
colour
really,
you want, they'll do it with your logo and everything.
yeah, they're fabulous. But I have to say, when you get them made from a metal worker,
Yeah.
A, you haven't got the transport cost if you get them made over here. B, you're making them with no bottom, so they don't have to be so sturdy.
Yeah.
And C, they are a fraction of the price.
Oh, definitely.
And you can we don't need to open the doors to get them
Yeah.
in and out because we do the baseless. But I do love those, and
Yeah.
I've got some in my own garden
Yeah.
where I've got my filarias in, and they're a real treat, and I love those. Those are just 600 square,
Yeah.
which is a nice size in my veg garden.
So these are 600s by, I think, a metre tall.
They're 600 diameter,
Yeah,
are they?
they're not
Wow.
huge. It's because the space is so tight to get in round the
Yeah.
table, otherwise you'd nut yourself on the table.
Gosh, I thought they looked bigger than that.
No.
And of course, olive is easy in a pot,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because it doesn't mind being a confined space. So then we go on to terracotta, which you touched on before. And I mean, I love terracotta.
Yeah.
But I think the thing you have to be mindful of here is that you can get frost-resistant terracotta,
And frostproof.
and you can get frostproof, exactly. And that is the problem. If you use frost-resistant and we get a very cold winter and we
Yeah.
have the freeze-thaw, hot, cold, cold, it can burst the terracotta. And it does depend on many things. It's the type of
Yeah.
firing, the type of clay. If they fire them very fast, then they get big air bubbles and they
Yeah.
split. And the problem is there is no sort of code for terracotta pots to say this
So
is
it's completely
definitely this.
unregulated. So
Unregulated.
if I go to home base, is it likely to be frostproof if I'm lucky?
They probably don't even say, and it depends who the supplier is.
Yeah.
But in the UK, there are 2 or 3 manufacturers, maybe more, that sell the frost proof.
Yeah.
And I use the terracotta pot company a lot, Brian Drury, and he will even get me made ones to my design.
in Greece, those ones you got done at the crab apples in the veg garden at Time,
Yes, well,
and then
there's
the stew pond. Is it
by
called?
the stew pond.
I've got a
we've
picture of
used
that because I remember taking
lovely
photos that look lovely.
trees there, which
Yeah.
are really nice. And what is in the advantage of the stew pond at Time is because it's very wet,
Oh, it floods regularly.
the plants are out of the water in the winter.
Yeah.
And that is a big advantage, so they don't
Yeah.
die of wet. So that's one thing to do in a flooded area. So Brian Drury makes these, they're made in Greece, or he gets
Yeah.
them made in Greece, and he guarantees them for 50 years against frost. So that is pretty amazing. Obviously with all these terracotta, we usually angle grinder at the base.
Yeah.
Because I like my pots to be baseless, so that they, like your olives are, so they can get their roots down. And you think, my God, that will take ages for that tree's
No.
roots to go down, but they'll be down probably in a few months. And I've got box that I put in chimney pots about this high, and
Yeah.
they're really into the ground, and I never feed or water them.
But there also the other advantage of baseless pots that I remember from being little is when it used to be windy at home, and your terracotta pots in that bit, you know, where you've got the table in your Thomason Cudworth pot and then it goes down
Yeah.
to the greenhouse. I remember having terracotta pots and it was our job to go out and pick them up once they'd blown over.
Yeah, this way
They don't blow
they
over
don't
anymore.
blow over, so it's much, much better.
Yeah.
And also when you want to pinch them, so we've done gardens that are right by the seafront, and we've
Yeah.
done this way, and you cannot nick them because
Good luck
the
to
roots
anybody
in
who
the
wants to
ground.
nick those quince trees outside.
So therefore that's terracotta. And there are certain terracotta that I love, like the Italian terrace ones.
Yeah.
But they are just frost resistant, and
Yeah.
they say in order for them to guarantee them, you have to plant them the way they say.
With
and
the
that
terram
is
liner.
with terram lining and
Yeah.
up on feet in the winter, so that they don't get very wet, and then they're not so full of moisture, and then when it's frosty they burst.
Yeah.
So that prevents that, and then they will guarantee them. But unless you do that, they won't.
Yeah.
And so for me, that doesn't really work. But I do love their pots, and I have used
Yeah.
them many times, and we often take the bases out.
I'd say Italian terrace is great for pot porn. Is it weird to call it pot porn? Because their
Yeah.
pots are stunning, but for my little space down there, they're miles out of my budget.
They are expensive, but they're lovely.
But
They're
that's
really
probably
lovely.
because we would use the massive ones because they look really good.
Yeah, pot porn, I think, is a lovely thing, phrase. I suppose then we've got things like those beautiful pots that we used at Horatio's garden that are made by
Talk pots. They were lovely, but they were donated, so I'm guessing they're also on the higher end.
Talk pots are very generously donated them
Yeah.
for the Horatius Garden in Oswestry Street.
And they're beautiful because they're up by the building, and they give it what was quite a small space, its own sense of space, as it were.
Yeah, and they're concrete. They come in all different colours. They're concrete blend. I think they say it's their secret mix of whatever, but it's a concrete mix with other things.
Yeah.
And they do wonderful, very modern shapes. They're lovely shapes. So they're completely different to most other ones you see. Now, wooden ones, we use a lot, don't we? We're always drawing up different styles of wooden pots. And they are really, if you get a chippy that gives you a good price, I think they're very good value, especially because we're always going big.
Yeah,
so to do
but we
nice
do a metre by
pot,
metre pots normally is our standard.
No, I would say 800 by 800 is.
But we do quite a few metre by metres.
Do quite a few metre by metre, but I also do 600 by 600. And again, if it's wood, and the reason that we design them, get someone to make them, is because they have no base most of the time.
And they have that black plastic sleeve in them to keep them sturdy.
Yeah, so A, they have no base, so they're cheaper for the chippy to make, and they don't have to be so sturdy. B, we can use a pressure-treated softwood, and if we put a black liner, waterproof liner in, then they seem to last a long time, because most of it's out of the moisture, and then we can do a paint finish. And those usually come at sort of 400, 500, which is quite a lot. I mean, this is not cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's not cheap, but then if you think about it, those wooden pots you've got in your driveway, they've lasted donkey's years.
Yes, they're lovely. I love them.
And they're probably
big. Those are probably metre ones,
the
aren't they?
cork oak ones.
With the cork oaks.
They're metre and they've lasted donkey's years, but the ones on the way further in by the stable door, they must be 30 odd years old.
35.
They're slightly warping now, but they still look really good, and they've got their integrity.
They do actually. For that length of time, they look pretty good. I might repair them a bit in a few years' time, just to keep them right.
But I'm put off wooden pots because I've looked online for lots of pots and backwards and forwards and played around with things. But the wooden pots you find on the market, unless you want to spend north of 100 quid, they just look a bit naff. And even if you paint it, they just look a bit like, great.
Mass-produced ones, yes. I think it's because we're taking the bottoms out that they come out a lot cheaper and there's no profit. I think that's what it is. And another option, obviously, is we obviously have access to wholesalers, and when we buy a lot of one pot, we obviously get them at about a third of the price. And
so I suppose we're cheating when we say we buy terracotta pots, because we buy our terracotta pots wholesale. We buy our metal pots, I'm guessing it's wholesale.
Mainly, in the main. Well, the metal pots are made up by a supplier, so it makes no difference. To whether me or Joe Bloggs is just buying one, they don't give me a better price. But when we are buying, when a lot of the interior design firms, the big wholesale interior design firms, will do ranges of outdoor pots.
So you love One World and I can't remember what
Coach House and people like that. But you have to buy quite a volume. But usually they're made in somewhere like China, which is why they're such good value. But if you can have access to
you just get
wholesale, you get a
big
much
range.
better price. You get a huge range, like the ones I put in the wall garden recently.
Oh, do you mean the ones that
the
Coach House
tall
on the table?
ones, yes. And then there's the lovely verdigris finished metal ones with the studs. And then they do all sort of zinc look-alike ones in squares and
I think even if I
shapes.
scored all the local garden centres around me, I think I'd be pushed to find anything similar.
Yeah,
I think I'd have to go to the second to none up the road of the reclaim place.
You talk about reclaim, so that's where I source a lot of my pots, on eBay, reclaim places and things like that, and that is amazing. You get the best bargains ever there. If you've got the time to scout through their websites and
it takes a bit of scouting, but then again I think if you're designing bits for your garden, it's going to take a bit of time to design it, and that's part of the design process.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's fun. It's like your wardrobe, isn't it? Adding to your wardrobe, it's adding to your garden and bits.
Mrs.
Well,
eBay.
I would rather obviously add bits to my garden than my wardrobe, I think. So, and then if you go right down to the cheapest of the cheap, I suppose the cheapest of the cheap
would be the black plastic.
The black plastic pots, so they come in often these, or you can get them from nurseries. The freebie they send me often these black plastic pots, and I just cover them with hessian or that lovely willow on the roll, or heather roll, anything like that to hide it, or you could paint them even. And then you instantly, I still cut the bases out usually, and then instantly you have a pot that's quite presentable. Obviously Hessian won't last probably more than 2 years, but Hessian, again, on the internet, massive rolls for upholstery.
Yeah.
Not expensive, and it's very useful stuff. So what else is there? So we've often painted plastic, so we bought cheap plastic pots, see if I can find one.
No.
And painted them, and they last a fair few years.
Oh yeah, I did have one that lasted about 8 years.
Yeah, and you can touch
basic acrylic.
Yeah. So really, with the pots then for here, going back to here, the pink garden unity.
Yeah.
What do you think you will use for your pink garden? What are you going to grow in them?
I think because I like cooking and I like making like waters with, I don't know, different herbs and teas and stuff like that with different herbs. I think I'll put like a herb pot, so like a lemon balm, a bay. I don't want anything too fancy. I want something more hard-boiled. I like a thyme, and then maybe like tomatoes and another in the summer, and then shove a couple of bulbs in before the tomatoes have come through, kind of thing.
So you're going to run them all the way down there?
Well, it's not all the way down because as a path, it's wider at this end and then it gets narrow at that end, and I don't want to be tripping over a plant pot while trying to plug in the lawnmower. It's not going to work. So I think I only want about 5 pots, but it's a key thing because you can see it from there, you can see it from the kitchen, and then you can see it from upstairs. But so upstairs you see further back, you don't see close. What style are you going to get? What type? I think I've been looking a lot, and I've looked at IKEA because they've got some quite nice pots. H&M Home have got them. Discovered Zara Home had some the other day. They all look quite nice. Yes. But it's like they're not that cheap. Does it sound crazy? What so what sort of size are you looking for? I'm looking that's the problem. I'm looking for like a 400 to 500 high kind of pot by about 400. So that's the size of that. So that's the size of the Apta pot that I bought back from you. And have you decided on one? I think I'm going to go for the Apta. It's like the whitewashed egg, they call it, rather than the linear. It's called the linear antique linear, because I want a lighter one, because I think that one that you've got there is just too dark. So that pot's there, an old stone cylinder from Apta, and it is about 45 high, and I bought some for going down my hornbeam arch, and I planted my hornbeam arches on those, and I see that is guaranteed for 25 years frost guarantee, so that's pretty good. Yeah. And so you're going for the egg pot, which is a lighter, more cylindrical going up. It's a lighter because I don't want it too dark in that space, because I feel it's quite dark already. Right. So hopefully, in order to get wholesale, I think we have to get a pallet load of them. Yeah. So we'll go and get 5 or so of those, and if you have to order a couple more, maybe I'll take them in my garden. Where will you? And that where would you like them, Van? Where would you put them? I'll find somewhere. Yeah. So that makes them quite reasonable. So that's a roundup of pots, really, pot consideration. Everything looks better in a pot, doesn't it? It elevates it, makes it look more important. And it makes it look a bit more special. Makes it look very much special. And when people do things like, Sophie Conran had that table of display pots, they look fantastic. Yes, she did. And they were all the same plant in each pot, wasn't it? She didn't mix them. And I think that's one thing I tend not to do, because my 100-odd pots I've got at home, nearly all baseless. Yeah. Most of them, because I have very little time to maintain my garden. And just Dave one day a week. So therefore I put one type of plant usually in each pot. I rarely mix them because it's just easier with one type. And I think they look really nice like that. Yeah. And then you have all different plants in all different pots, and you get a nice sort of Harlequin mix. Yeah. But there we are. So it's pot porn. So there's a bit of pot porn. And if you're looking for some nice big pots, don't forget, the bigger you go, the easier they are to maintain, the better they look. Yeah. And just keep your eyes open. And if you find any good bargains, please let us know.